Hello, I'm Michel Gagné, and you are listening to the Real-Time Visual Effects Podcast, where wizards reside.
You have a gift. You have a passion for creation. There's something inside you that wants to express itself, and that something has led you to explore the world of visual effects, a place where magic happens, and the only limitation is your imagination. All the greatest artists in the world started somewhere, learning and growing into the people they are today. You being here is the first step to building your legacy as an artist. Learn from the best and brightest in the real-time visual effects community. Sharpen your skills and be your best self. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 17. Today is an interview with Gabriel Aguiar. I recently took a Udemy course on the foundations of visual effects in Unreal Engine for Niagara, and it was super awesome following Gabe's lectures as he talked through everything from how we can create color palettes to how we can use these dynamic systems to create some really scalable effects in Unreal. And I'm super excited to kind of share his personal journey with you today. So without further ado, let's dive in.
Here is your host, Travis McCallum.
Hey everybody, today I have Gabriel Aguiar. He is a visual effects artist who does a ton of awesome freelance works for all kinds of companies, but he also has his own production studio he started up called Gabriel Aguiar Productions. Gabe, how you doing today, man?
Hey, Travis. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. I hope you are doing well as well.
Yeah, we're in Texas, and I know it's been record high 100-degree weather, and I know you're over in Portugal in South America. How's the weather over there right now?
It's really hot here in Europe. It's getting really hot this last week. We had an enormous heat wave. Jesus, so hot.
Well, hopefully that air conditioning's blowing and keeping you cool.
Oh, it's helping a lot. Yeah, definitely.
So Gabe, I want to jump into all these awesome projects that you've done in the past, working at companies like Crossing Answers on games like Raccoon Escape and from the beginning, but kind of dial back for a second and tell me, how did you get started in visual effects?
Well, I had quite a journey until I got to visual effects. First, I graduated in interior designer, as an interior designer, making blueprints, making 3D photorealistic renders, basically architecture visualization for interiors and all of that. And later on, I graduated. I was actually one of the best in my classes and everything was really going well. My next step was following architecture, but I came into a crossroads and I had to choose a path. And I was very curious about game design. And back in 2012, 2011, there was a new course that opened here in Portugal, which was about game design. And so I went on that path. I followed that path and I quit architecture. I stopped following architecture. And then when I got into game design, I learned a lot about game design. A lot, really a lot, because game design is an enormous field. But one that sparked most of my curiosity, I guess, was visual effects. And well, I started playing with particle systems because that's how you get into visual effects. And then, well, I also watched a few tutorials and it was so intuitive. Once I played with the particle system, everything started to work out together really well. I guess, I don't know, I had an eye for it or something like that. But that's how I started in visual effects for games.
So thinking back to architecture, like when you were growing up and kind of getting out of high school into your higher education, like what prompted that idea of just visual artistry to begin with? Why go that path as opposed to another area like lawyering or doctoring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was really passionate about drawing. Drawing, I guess, is what got me into all of these digital arts, all of these arts. And I was more inclined to arts, I guess, from the beginning. And drawing is something I always have done since a very young age. And I wanted to get better at it. And that interior design course also had drawing classes. And I think it was a combination of two things that I liked, which is interior design and drawing. And that's what pushed me to go to that course. Yeah.
Can you think back to sometime in your childhood when you drew something or created something that really sparked this pride or excitement inside you? Maybe like your parents complimented something you created.
I was, funny enough, when I was back in high school and even before that, I always liked to draw a lot of 3D stuff with a lot of perspective. And my friends were always complimenting me with, that's so cool, that's so nice, you should follow something related to that. And that's mostly what sparked in me that, oh, maybe I got something here. I don't know. Maybe I should follow this passion that I got. Yeah, I think it was that. Friends and family, of course, they always got my back, I guess.
That's awesome, man. And when you decided to make that shift from architecture into game design, did you grow up playing games? Was there like something that was in your childhood that was like, man, games are super cool, it's worth maybe checking out?
Yes, definitely. I played so many games. So many games. I had my Game Boy, the first generation Game Boy, and I played a lot of games there. I also had the NES, I don't know how you say, I got the Super Nintendo, yeah. And later on I got the PS2, which is where I played tons of games as well. I also had an enormous passion for playing games. I guess I can say that, yeah.
Was there one or two games that really stuck out and you kind of said, how did they do this? I'm interested in maybe doing this myself someday.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of games that made me wonder how they do this, man. I'm also so curious about this. Especially I remember Oblivion, playing Oblivion, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and many other games. But I remember now Elder Scrolls Oblivion, which is an RPG. And they had a lot of effects and spells, and it was so captivating. And the story as well. Curious enough, I learned a lot in English playing that game. Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome, man. So I know the definition for what real-time visual effects stands for is a little bit ambiguous across the community. So I'm just curious, how would you define real-time visual effects?
Well, that's a tough question because it can be answered in so many ways, you know. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Personally, I think that what is truly amazing about this area is that it's one of the most amazing digital art forms there is. And it's truly captivating because you can make anything you want. Your imagination is your limits. In real-time visual effects, it's not only about shaders and textures and particle systems. It involves knowing 3D in general. It involves programming. It involves animation, illustration, color theory, game design. I mean, I don't know. It involves the culmination of all of these areas into one thing. And to me, visual effects is not only visual effects. It's all of these areas that when you start perceiving that you need all of them to make visual effects, you really have something there. And it's a bridge between technicality, between programming and aesthetics, and between, you know, where the player goes, I got you, or, oh, I died. You have to give that perception to the player with visual effects. That's visual effects for me, giving sensations to the players and things like that.
That's amazing. That is so amazing. I love how you say that really anything that your imagination can dream up is possible through visual effects. Exactly. So we, as creators, have so much power, Gabe. Like we can do anything, really.
Anything, yeah, anything. It's amazing. When you think about it, you see something in movies. It's not only in games, but if you see something in movies and you want to recreate that in a game engine like Unity or Unreal, you can do that. Why not? You can. You definitely can. That's the power we have as visual effects artists.
So when did you first get into visual effects? It was back in the 2000s?
Yeah, 2014, 15, more or less like that.
Yeah, so about 5-6 years ago. I'm curious, Gabe, you know, thinking back to 2014, what are some things that you wish you had known when starting out on this rather expansive field?
Well,
that you know now.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that I wish I knew when I started is more about shaders. Personally, I think that's my case because I played around with particle systems a lot and textures and creating 3D objects for the effects. But shaders was always a field where I actually never digged as much as I should. I think I should have gone a little bit deeper in the beginning and get out of the way that thing. Because shaders, it's really powerful when you are in visual effects. And I think that's one of the things I should have learned more, as well as flipbook animations. Flipbook animations, 2D animations, it's one of the things that it's also where I failed when I started. Yeah.
I know shaders are an integral part to a visual effects artist toolkit, but I was wondering, maybe with your experience in shaders right now, can you maybe describe to me one or two awesome things that you can do with shaders and do in your effects today? Maybe something that you use often that you would say, hey, artist, maybe try doing this with a shader someday.
Well, shaders are so powerful. You can even animate flags and plants with it. You don't even need to animate with bones. I mean, if you know about 3D, you know you need bones and stuff like that to animate an object. But with shaders, you can even animate a simple plant with shaders, and that's awesome. For example, you can also do fires, easily fires with shaders. And you can also do them by painting 2D textures, for example. But with shaders, you have that variety, that procedural generation that the computer does on itself. Of course, it's very distinct arts. When you have shaders alone and then you have 2D animations with drawn textures, that's two different things and two different results, very different results. But I guess that's two ways of doing the same thing. It comes up with which one do you like the most, or which one is more appropriate for a project.
And sometimes you can combine the both into a single effect. So
yeah.
It just opens up more possibilities.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So I want to ask, throughout all your years of success, surely there have been times where you've struggled or failed at something. I was wondering kind of what your take on failure is and how you bounce back and turn it into a learning experience. Maybe if you could share an example of a time you struggled with something.
Well, mostly when I got into independent work, into freelance work, when I left the job that I had and I said, yeah, I'm going to be a freelancer now. One thing that I did wrong, where I failed, is basically accepting too many freelance jobs. One should know the limits it can have. And accepting too much of freelance jobs, it's bad for you, because you could be focusing more on one client and making something better and stressing less and stressing much less than having 4 clients at the same time asking different things. And yeah, that can really mess up your schedule. And that's something that I think I should have handled. But I guess once you have one client, you can also do a bunch of other stuff and invest on your education. That's very important.
Yeah. So how do we know when we're taking on more than we can chew? Where's that limit?
Well, basically when you get different scale, because once you accept freelance jobs, you also have to have in mind that there's different schedules across the world, of course. And there's time zones where you are already sleeping and people are starting to work. And you realize that, oh, maybe I should have done this before I should go to sleep. Or maybe I should have done this in the morning because the day is ending in Israel or something like that. And you realize that you have really to be careful with what you work on. You have to be super organized when it comes to working with several clients. Yeah. And if you stop being organized, you will realize that your deadlines are not being accomplished, you know? Yeah.
So when we think about like top skills for managing clients, like time management is obviously like up there.
Very important. Yeah, extremely important. Among other things, like listening to the clients, of course, that's important. I'm giving advice now if someone is listening and wants to get into freelance visual effects. Listening to the clients is the most important thing because it's their project, you know, it's their game. You should listen and should pay attention. And you are not going to make an effect for yourself. Never forget that. You are going to make an effect for a client, for a team, for a game. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like, you've been freelancing for a while now. You graduated from college and you decided to go into this kind of field where you could work at your own pace on the projects that you want instead of that traditional route of joining a studio. Can you tell me like why you decided to go with that decision? And kind of describe to me, what are the pros and cons to freelance?
Well, while I was studying, I actually got a job on the industry. That's the funny thing. I was on my second year of 3-year course and I got a job on the field making games, which was game design and crossing answers. And everything was going well. But once I realized that I was not, I don't know, I felt like my time was not being put into something that I like, put into something that I can grow later on. It's basically you are working for someone, you are doing that job, specific job. And once I realized that I want to be more free, have more freedom, that's when I decided to quit my job and to go freelancing. And I also finished my course, of course, my game design course. I graduated from game design. Jesus, sometimes it's hard to find the words. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. And so I graduated from that course and I quit my job and I went freelancing. And the pros and cons, obviously, is that at the beginning you will probably have a very hard time. But of course, I had my savings and I had everything planned out. And once the freelance jobs started popping up, that's when I got a little bit more relaxed, and I realized that I made the correct choice, the safest choice. Not the safest choice, but the one that brought me most happiness, I guess. And what was the question again, Travis? Sorry.
No worries. I was just curious to know kind of what the pros and cons were to freelance. Obviously, you mentioned that you were happier and you had more time to pursue the projects that you wanted. And you started kind of like with the downsides of it. But if you have some more experience.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, the positive side is, of course, you can manage your own time and you can grow your own business. But there's also the awesome thing where you start realizing that you can choose your projects. And that's a good thing. You can choose on what you are going to work. That's very important. But like I said before, never keep too many jobs, many freelance jobs at the same time. But funny enough, I don't do freelance job for over a year now. Which is funny enough because I've come to the realization that I was falling into the same pattern that I had before when I worked on Crossing Ends and when I worked for a company, which is I don't have much freedom now. I'm freelancing, I'm doing what the others want, not what I want. And that's when I start realizing, yeah, I'm falling again in the same pattern, on the same lifestyle, which is working for others. And that's fine until some point, but that's not what I want. What I want is to be totally independent, and which is where I am now. I have my YouTube channel. I have several things on the Asset Store and on Marketplace, on Reel. I have my Udemy courses. Fortunately enough, I don't need freelance jobs. But until I got there, I need a lot of freelance jobs, obviously. Obviously, that's very important. But you have to realize at some point that you need to start creating passive income instead of only have active income. And that's when I realized that, okay, freelance is consuming a lot of time and I cannot invest in passive income. So I had to choose once again, am I going to keep on doing freelance and do what the others want, or I'm going to invest my time in building something? And that's what I did. I started building something that would later on grow and generate some income, passive income, basically.
And I think like all of us as artists, no matter what kind of industry or field you're in, run into that conundrum where you want to create art that you want to create that brings you joy, but often that's not commercial work. So you're not getting paid to do that passion. So you got to pick up these projects and these different types of arts that not necessarily you're like 100% invested in. You're doing it for a paycheck. I think about that in, the film industry as well. Like a lot of people that are like videographers, they're not shooting the big feature film sci-fi piece that they want. Instead, they're shooting, commercials at the car dealership or whatnot.
So true, yeah.
Because it's a means to an end. But like you said,
exactly, means to an end.
Those early clients that you got, you built up your capital to a point where now you can be independent and kind of support your own personal projects. And I don't know how it is in other countries, but at least here in America, that's where entrepreneurship and this idea of like the American dream or capitalism comes from. Is like, if you put in the work, you can achieve whatever kind of goals that you set out for. Exactly. At least that's how it goes.
So true. That's so true. And that's what I thought. And that's what I followed. Because like you said, that's an American dream, but it's also a dream for the world, which is becoming independent and doing what we love and building something from the ground. It's hard, and it takes years and years, and there's downsides and upsides and whatnot. But in the end, we can have something that I can say it's our own. It's our stuff that we have built, and that's the most joyful thing that can happen.
Yeah. So, Gabe, describe to me, now that you've been working in effects for a bit, what does your workflow look like for creating a new effect from start to finish? Can you kind of walk us through what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. Well, most of the times I obviously want to know what's the purpose of the effect that I'm going to build. Is it a projectile? Is it an area of effect? Something for the environment? And once I know what's the purpose of the effect, I do a deep research to see what exists out there. Basically, gathering reference, it's very important. Once I have gathered reference, to me personally, I love to sketch. Like I said in the beginning of the interview, I always had a passion for drawing. So that helps me out a lot to build an effect from the ground up. And once I have the sketch, either in Photoshop or in a notebook, sometimes I'll have to doodle just some idea. And that's very, very useful. Because once you get the idea in paper or on screen, you can go to Unity or to Unreal or even to Photoshop or to After Effects and start building that. Because, for example, if I'm building an effect that needs to have a lot of timings, precise timings, then I go to Unity and I start with a square. I start always with squares and stuff like that. And I don't have any special texture and any color. I just want black and white and gray scale, so I can understand the timings and the contrasts. Contrast is extremely important. So that's kind of my workflow for prototyping an effect, which is gathering reference, then sketching, and then go to Unity and start playing with the timings.
Awesome.
Once I have that done, I can move on then to colors, the textures and painted textures or shaders, or will I use something? Most of the times we combine both. I'm putting them in distinct fields, but most of the times we combine both, and then also try to see if something is missing, basically. Yeah.
One area that I just want to touch base on is the use of color, for instance. Why is that later in your workflow rather than kind of starting it in the beginning?
Well, mostly because I want to understand the contrast and the timing. Like I said, if it is a time-based effect, I don't want to be distracted by color when I'm building the effect. I want to be focused on timing. But if there is no timing involved, or if it's something very simple with timing, then yeah, I may start with color.
Got it.
So yeah, it depends on what I'm doing. Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is because I often wonder across what we call the principles of VFX, right? Mm-hmm. This idea that Jason Keyser put together of like contrast or values, as he kind of says it, color, timing, what was the other one? Shape language as well. Like, where is like priority and weight in each of these? And where do you like emphasize and focus on this piece before you sequentially move on to the next piece? Or does any of that even matter is kind of the question. And I guess it's effect by effect basis.
Sometimes it is effect by effect basis, but deep down we try to follow a pattern that sometimes it is subconscious to us. And that's what happens sometimes personally to me. I may start not doing sketches at all. I may jump into Unity and pick something and play with that. That happens a lot. So it's kind of a tough question asking for workflow because most of the times it depends on what's the purpose of the effect. But those principles of visual effects, sometimes they help you, guide you when you feel more lost, or when you feel like, what is missing here? I know something is missing. And then you start thinking, yeah, let me see the principles of visual effects. You start remembering them in your mind and you realize, oh, I know what's missing. It's contrast. It is too bright, or it is not very perceptible. So that's when principles of visual effects come in handy. It's when you feel more lost or when you feel like something is missing. Well, at least to me, it helps sometimes.
Thanks for sharing. So I want to ask, what does a day in the life of Gabriel look like from sunrise to sunset?
Well, let me tell you one thing. My schedule is crazy. But basically, I wake up around 8 and 9, do my morning routine, and then sometimes I go for a walk whenever the weather allows for that. And when I get back home, which is where I have my office in a different room, I get in my office, and most of the times in the morning I answer emails and doubts and questions because I got a lot of questions. I got so many questions on a daily basis that it's crazy. But I answer them in the morning most of the times, and questions from Udemy courses and from YouTube and from Patreon, basically. And I have to prioritize. I always prioritize Udemy and Patreon. But anyway, I answered those questions that my students have, and not only students, and basically mails and stuff like that. And then recently, well, over a year ago, I started my indie game dev journey. We start building a game with my fiance, Marisa, and that's where I spend most of my day, basically. Then I go make some lunch. On the afternoon, I keep on playing on the game. If it is on the weekend, I always focus on creating videos and tutorials for my YouTube channel. So basically, on the 5 days that there is in the week, I work on the game. And on the weekend, I work on the channel or side projects like building a course or building assets for the Unity Asset Store or the marketplace. I do that stuff mostly on the weekend. And yeah, from time to time, I take a day off. I don't take much days off, actually. But that's basically my day.
So you're usually in bed maybe about 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Oh
just
yeah, I
rinse and
forgot
repeat.
about that part. Yeah, yeah, more or less around midnight, 1 a.m. Yeah, yeah.
So do you have any downtime in between? Do you find time to like decompress, like, and overcome any kind of stress that you have? Like, what kind of activities do you do?
Well, I really love to play the piano from time to time. I love to play on my Switch. Yeah, I got a Switch, and I love to pick up Switch, and and I got so many games there. Lately, I've been playing 2D games, mostly platforms and stuff like that, and Metroidvanias, because I need to have like open up my repository since I'm building a game, and I play a lot of 2D games. And that's what I do after dinner, mostly around 10 to 10 and midnight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. I
And
also,
of course, family time. Yeah, never forget family time and spending time with your family. Of course, let's not forget about that.
so you have your girlfriend, soon to be fiance, Marissa, you said?
Yes.
And is your family also nearby in Portugal, like your mom and siblings or whatnot?
Well, I'm from Viseu, which is a town in the center, a city in the center of Portugal. But I actually live 100 miles, 120 miles away in Coimbra. And sometimes in the weekend, I go visit my family and we spend there. It's like, that's when I relax the most. When I go to my parents' house, we stay there, we relax, we travel, we go dinner outside, we go have lunch outside, something like that. Nowadays, with this weather in summer, we go to the pool and stuff like that. Yeah, we have a barbecue. It's really relaxing. It's really nice. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So I know we talked a little bit about while you were in school, you were working for a game dev 3D design company called Crossing Answers.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know you produced 2 games there, Raccoon Escape and From the Beginning. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about those 2 projects and how your role evolved during your time on them. And maybe if you could just describe a little bit about what those games are about too, that'd be awesome.
Okay, so one is a game and the other is an animation, a movie, a short, let's say a short of 20 minutes. So Raccoon Escape is a game, it's an arcade game that we published on Android for mobile and iOS. And that's when I got the job on my second year of game design. I got a job to work on that company, Crossing Answers, to help build out Raccoon Escape. So yeah, we build up Raccoon Escape. Raccoon Escape gets published, but I think it didn't go as planned. The game is pretty. It's nice. It's an arcade game. but it didn't get too much attention.
What's kind of the premise or story behind it? Like, what's the player supposed to do?
The player is basically trying to save a raccoon from falling into hell, I guess. And yeah, it has a very curious mechanic with ropes, and it's actually really nice, a cool mechanic. But yeah, it didn't grow as we expected, but it's fine. And then we did the 3D animation called From the Beginning, which
Real
is
quick, with Raccoon Escape, like, what was your role on it? What did you do? Did you do effects for it, or were you doing something else at the time?
Actually, at the time, I didn't do any effects for it. What I was doing, curious enough, at the time was 2D animation, 2D illustration, and programming, prototyping, implementing ideas and stuff like that, especially building up the menus for the game. And I also made a few sound effects and music because I always had a passion for music, which is something that has followed me throughout my life. And what else did I do? That's basically it, yeah. Programming, illustration, and 2D animation. Yeah.
Cool. So a bit of a generalist, had a little bit of everything.
Design, yeah, literally game design, which was very, very cool because I learned a lot of stuff. Yeah. And then we built up From the Beginning, which is animation that went to Sesimbra Museum. And it's about basically Sesimbra from the prehistoric times, from the Paleontolic times, because they got a lot of dinosaur footprints and stuff like that. And it goes from that era to Roman and ancient times, influence of Rome in that area, Sesimbra, which is near Lisbon, by the way. It's like 20 miles near Lisbon, yeah. And it's a beautiful city, by the way, near the sea. Cool city. And the animation focused on that and on the history of Sesimbra until the modern times and the influence that the ocean, the maritime life has in Sesimbra. It's a very complex animation. We took over a year. That was really a lot of work. Really a lot of work, yeah. And my job there was basically managing a small team of 3D animators and 3D generalists, basically. And we have to do 3D animations. We actually had to do mocap, motion capture for animating characters and stuff like that, and do a lot of environment work. It was fun. And actually, we did visual effects there, like explosions and stuff like that, yeah, rendering. It was experience, which today I don't play that much with that.
That's awesome, though. You really get a ton of exposure in these different fields, and it's really crazy how like what you did back then has contributed to who you are today and has made your work better as a result. One thing I was thinking about, you said that, was it Lisbon is beautiful, you should go there? You said something like that?
Yeah, yes, Zimbra. It's near Lisbon, and both cities are awesome.
Zimbra, gotcha. I'm just thinking about like what I see a lot of FX artists do across the field is like, as kind of like these field trips or these scouting trips, you know, the teams will go out to the ocean and just observe like how the waves kind of crash against the beach. And, you know, they take photographs and they use that as reference, like you said in your workflow, to kind of build their stuff. So thinking about like where you've been now, have you maybe thought or done anything like that in the past? Just kind of observed your surroundings or the worlds to create your effects?
We did a lot of that observation exercise and real world drawing, but we did that in drawing classes. For visual effects, most of the times, and personally, I go look for footage, existent footage on the internet, basically. That's the research part. But every time that I feel like I don't get the motion of something, I try to draw it frame by frame really quick or something like that. But yeah, getting footage, live footage of something and personally being there, it's awesome. At least when we had the drawing classes, we go outside and we draw buildings, we draw anything, basically anything that the eye can catch. And that's extremely helpful to understand the motion, to understand the shape, to understand the proportions of things. Proportion is really important. And yeah.
So this transitions into my next question for you, Gabriel, and maybe it's an opportunity, maybe for you or somebody else who wants to jump on it, but for education. I know that you've been building both free and paid courses for visual effects students using platforms like YouTube and Udemy. Just saying, if we wanted to look at real life reference observation as a class, somebody could do that out to the audience. Anyway, how did you decide to jump into building classes? And where did you decide what you should give away for free and what you should charge for?
Exactly. That's a good question. Well, every time I make a YouTube video, let's not forget that I'm making mostly important. I'm making a project for my patrons because I got a patron page and I got quite a few patrons, and it's always for me important to do something, to give away something cool for my patrons.
And just to clarify, what is Patreon?
Patreon is a platform where you pledge, and it's basically a subscription where you pledge to an artist and you get rewards. Yeah, that's basically it. But like I was saying, and every time I make a video, a free video, let's call it like that, because it's for YouTube and it's free, I always show how I do the basic stuff, basically. But I always leave a package, or I always post a package, more specifically, on my Patreon page with much more. It's basically what I show on YouTube. It's always the basics. And on Patreon, there's also something more complex, more beautiful, more trained, more, it's not trained, I want to say, it's more worked on, basically. And well, that's how it works. Basically, I'm making free videos for YouTube, but I'm also posting a little package, something extra for my patrons. Sometimes a lot of assets, actually. But yeah, I always give away something free to the public. Hey, if you want to know how to do this, that's how you do it. At least the basics. But if you want to study this up close, you can go to my Patreon. You can get there. You can break down stuff and you can play with what I have done, with the scene, with everything, basically. The other question was about Udemy. Why do I create Udemy courses? Well, Udemy came as a great way, as a great opportunity to teach the basics of visual effects, mostly. And I felt like that was something worthy of posting as a course with a lot of exercises and where people can post questions, and the students that get in, they can read those questions, and it's like a community basically, and it's a small community where people are starting to understand visual effects and they can talk to each other, they can read the questions that the other student has posted. But mostly why do I post on Udemy? Because I think it's a nice opportunity for whoever wants to get something super organized, because I know you have followed one or two of my courses, and I hope you have noticed that I always try to be super organized on the lectures. Like I separate everything from this lecture. Now we are going to do this, then we are going to do that, and everything is well organized. While on YouTube, if I wanted to do that, I could do it, but it would be different. It's kind of different. I don't know. I feel like a Udemy course for someone who wants to get into visual effects, it's better. It's a little bit better.
And you've got a couple courses on Udemy right now. Can you maybe just name one or two just so people want to look it up?
I got visual effects for games in Unreal Engine from beginner to intermediate. And I got the version for Unity as well, which is from beginner to intermediate in visual effects in Unity.
And I'll include a link to both of these courses for people interested in enlisting in Gabe's course. I'll say that they are super affordable too, so you won't be breaking bank. I've seen VFX courses out there for $500, and this is way
exactly
more affordable. And like Gabe says, he checks his email every morning and sees where he can help out if you have a question for him.
True. Yeah. I always try to help out students on Udemy and on Patreon.
Cool, man. So I know creating a course like the ones you have in Udemy must involve an incredible amount of effort. Can you kind of describe to me what kind of effort goes into building a course?
Yeah, it's a crazy effort. Yeah. Because basically when I decide to create a course, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop whatever I'm doing for the next 3 or 4 months, and I'm going to be working basically every day, every single day, a lot of hours into building that course for the 3 or 4 months. So it's an enormous and tremendous amount of work into organizing everything into classes, into video. And yeah, it takes a lot of time. And like I said, it's 3 to 4 months, but I'm working from morning to night, basically on the course, on building the course, and recording video, recording audio. Sometimes I record something For example, now we are talking like that, but when I'm making videos, I always have to record like 2 or 3 times sometimes a lecture because I did pronounce something wrong and something like that, and I have to redo a recording or for video as well. So if something doesn't come out as I don't want to say as quickly as I wanted, but if something doesn't come out because if sometimes I record something, if it come out wrong, I have to edit like a lot, and editing videos, it's really time consuming. It's incredibly time consuming. So sometimes I have to record again because I don't want to spend so much time editing a video.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like when films come out, like you'll maybe spend like for a short, maybe like a day or two filming, but then post-production, you're editing that film for like a good, 2 months before it's finally ready. So it's the same thing for you, but you have that pre-production phase where you're thinking about, okay, what is the outline or set out that I want to accomplish with this?
For sure, that's very important.
So for people that are interested, maybe teaching their own courses for visual effects, can you kind of tell us what advice you have to those teachers who want to build their own courses?
Well, I guess to get a lot of time on your hands, it's very important. Because
it's an all-in experience.
Yeah, it's a crazy experience. Like I said, it's 3 to 4 months, sometimes a bit more, and you only think about that. And when it comes to the end, you are going crazy, like, oh, I never end this. This is taking so much time. But anyway, an advice for new teachers and stuff like that. Well, first, you really need to know how to edit videos and how to edit sound and record, get a good mic and stuff like that, and invest in equipment. Then, like you said, always outline what you want, whatever you want to teach. Create an outline, create topics, and mentally try to visualize if it makes sense to a student. Because we know how some things work. That's the problem. We know how it works, but exposing that knowledge in a concise way, sometimes it's hard. So yeah, outline your stuff, take topics, and pre-production is important. And then you can jump into recording a few stuff. Yeah, pre-production is very important. That's one of the best advice I think I can give.
Cool. You finally started your own indie game studio called Gabriel Aguiar Productions alongside your fiance, soon-to-be wife. Congrats.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And you're currently working on your first game, Rabbit's Tale. Can you tell me a little bit about that game and that decision?
Yeah, sure.
How it's coming along?
Well, it's another crazy amount of work, but it's cool. It's cool because it's something that I always wanted to do since from 2012, since I started studying, since I left architecture and I jumped into game design. I made a lot of small games, as exercises and stuff like that. And I also worked on Raccoon Escape. And on Crossing Answers, we also prototyped a new game, which they are actually soon to release. I think it's called Overshook. I think it's for PS, exclusive for PS. Anyway, and it's basically something I always wanted to do, is develop games. That's my final purpose. I have learned visual effects, I have taught visual effects, but my purpose, my biggest motivation is to build games, to be an indie developer, to have a game studio in Portugal that can live, that can grow, that can have a future, and hopefully one day have a good team of programmers, of artists from Portugal, and not only from Portugal, obviously, but I guess what I'm trying to say is my goal is to have a game development company. And we finally, over a year ago, back in September 2019, I decided, okay, we are financially stable, so I think it's a good time to start thinking about a game, to start prototyping a game, and, well, let's see where it leads us. And my girlfriend, Marisa, is an excellent illustrator and animator, so basically we had like a great opportunity here because I know how to program, I know how to do visual effects, I know how to illustrate as well, and if we combine both of our energies, we can build a game, and it's going super well. We actually are building Rabbit's Tale. That's a working title in, it's not definitive, the name, but it's basically a Metroidvania, a 2D game, Metroidvania, with inspirations from Hollow Knight, from Whole Boy, those type of games. And it's the story of a rabbit that loses his family to an oppression, to a big oppression that exists, a rebellion. They are basically the rebellion. And he loses his family to that oppression. Let's put it that way. And he goes in the quest of trying to find the family, and something along the way, something mystical, something very mysterious happens to him, and that's all I can say for now.
Don't want to give away the whole plot yet.
Exactly.
I know this game's probably still fairly new. I'm curious, do you have a studio website, or do you have like a website kind of promoting the game right now? Or is that still kind of like the business side isn't quite there? You're still on the development side.
Exactly.
Okay,
at this point, the only thing I can say is if someone is interested in see where this goes, what I can say is pay attention to my YouTube channel, Gabriel Aguiar Prod, because soon we will have updates, we will have Steam wish lists, we will have official websites and official names for the enterprise. You know, all of that business stuff, all of that official stuff that is still missing.
Badass, man. All right. I know that you've been working both in Unity and Unreal, two super popular game engines. I was curious if you could maybe compare the two, and when somebody's first getting into game development for VFX, what advice would you give them in picking an engine to kind of start and learn?
Okay, so yeah, that's like the question of game design, one of the most asked questions in game design. Where to start, Unreal or Unity? My advice, independent of what you want, if it is visual effects or if it is game design, I always advise Unity. But I am a bit biased because I started in Unity. But personally, working on both engines, since I have developed assets for Unreal and Unity, personally, they have both their advantages and disadvantages. For example, in visual effects, when working in Unity, we got an awesome thing that is the particle system, which is very well structured, very well structured. While in Unreal, it's a bit different. We got Cascade, which is being upgraded. We got now Niagara. And basically, Niagara is super powerful. It's like visual effects graph in Unity. But the good thing about Unity is that you can, I think it's easier to start. Personally, I think it's easier to start in visual effects. But Unreal has got a cool thing. It has a good thing, which is material editor, where you basically you can build your own shaders and your own materials super easily. And another good thing that it has Unreal is that once you create something like in the oldest versions, like 4.17, that effect will always work throughout the versions. While in Unity, it's super hard sometimes to get things to work across versions. Personally, that happens to me a lot with the assets that I've developed. But yeah, to summarize, I advise Unity. Unity because I think it's a little bit easier and there's much more documentation and tutorials.
Awesome, man. Now, I know that you have been publishing a lot of assets on the Unity and Unreal Marketplace.
Exactly, yeah.
How has that been? How's that experience?
Well, I was actually already talking a little bit about that. But what I was trying to say is that building assets for Unreal, it's actually easier than building assets for Unity. I don't know why, but Unity, we have to build like 3 or 4 versions of the same thing. Mm. Because now we have URP, which is a universal render pipeline. We have the high definition render pipeline, and then we got the standard render pipeline. And it's great that Unity has built this stuff because now we have high-end games can be made in Unity and stuff like that. But for assets developers, I don't want to say a nightmare, but it's close to a nightmare. Mm. Keeping everything updated in Unity, it's hard. Every time there comes up a new Unity version, it's very likely that it has broken something previously, unfortunately. Yeah. And while in Unreal, that doesn't happen. Like I said previously, if you build something in older versions, it will work throughout the newer versions. okay, sometimes there's one or two things that may not work.
Sure.
But at least we don't need to build like 3 or 4 versions of the same asset, because there is high definition render pipeline or universal render pipeline or stuff like that. So yeah, it's a bit easier in Unreal than in Unity.
There's like a lot of like veteran artists who are skilled enough where they want to start sharing their work on these marketplaces, but they wonder, A, is it going to be profitable? B, are people going to, use stuff illegally, without my permission or whatnot? And all these kind of like, ethical and like business questions. Yeah. So I'm just curious kind of what's your take on that? And have you found it a valuable source of income for you? And were there other alternatives outside of just the engines for you to monetize your effects that you create besides Patreon, I guess, is one you mentioned?
Well, yeah, that's
more educational, I guess. So,
but it's also a good place to get my assets. I always publish my assets on the Patreon. All the assets that I got in Unreal Marketplace and the Unity Asset Store, I got them also on Patreon, because I think it's fair. It's super fair with my patrons. I mean, it's even more if you want to be my patron. If anyone wants to be my patron, they get much more access to stuff than buying assets individually. But going back to your question, well, Unity, I guess it's a little bit more profitable than Unreal. There's much more audience. The audience is enormous in Unity compared. It's 2 or 3 times bigger, I would say. So if you want to say make something profitable, yeah, maybe a Unity Asset Store, it's a good choice.
Okay, man, cool. All right, Gabe, we are going to get into the lightning round questions, quick and easy, just like visual effects.
Exactly, quick and easy.
Are you ready?
I am super ready, I think. Yeah, let's go.
What is a perfect one-day getaway in the Portugal and surrounding area?
Well, I would advise to start on Porto. Don't go to Lisbon, directly to Lisbon. Start in north of Portugal. And then follow the coastline and pass to Lisbon and end up in Algarve. Of course, that's not a one-day trip, but it's an awesome trip.
How do you all get around with transportation? Do you all take trains? Do you take buses? Like
trains, if you are in Porto and you want to get directly to Lisbon, you can go by plane, traveling by plane. But yeah, trains, and if you want to rent a car. Exactly. Yeah, rent a car.
I'm on the camera imitating, a steering wheel here. What video game or app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
Well, actually, I haven't been using much of my phone, let's say it that way. But the last one that I used intensively was TFT, Team Fighting Tactics, or Team Fight Tactics from Riot. That's one of the games that I've played a lot on my mobile, on my phone. But Switch for the win. Because Switch, there's so much things there. And that it's so cool. Yeah, I've been playing a lot of Switch, actually.
Nice. What is your favorite thing to cook or eat?
Well, actually, according to my girlfriend, I'm an excellent cooker. I don't want to brag, but if I had to choose, I would cook lasagna.
Ooh, lasagna.
Yeah, it's super delicious. Lasagna that I make.
What is your favorite book or podcast you've listened to recently?
Well, I'm an avid reader. I read on a daily basis. Yeah. Before I go to sleep, I actually love to read. And I always recommend José Saramago, which is a Nobel Prize winner, a Portuguese Nobel Prize winner of literature. And I love it. It's awesome. Podcasts, what I really like to listen is H3 podcasts and Joe Rogan Experience. Yeah, but every now and then, since you started the podcast, I have been listening to Real-Time Visual Effects podcast, for sure. That's an awesome podcast too.
Favorite video game visual effect you're jealous of that isn't your own?
Tough question. There's a lot of good effects out there, but I would choose League of Legends and Valorant. Basically, everything from Riot. They got awesome visual effects art. It's top-notch.
Best advice for a first-time visual effects artist or people looking to get into the industry?
Get my courses on Udemy. It will help you a lot.
Okay. What
you got everything there. Yeah.
What are you most excited about for the future of visual effects?
Well, I'm actually super curious to see what people come up with visual effects graph in Unity and Niagara on Unreal. But I'm always looking out for stylized effects.
Any final thoughts to plug? Anything you want to promote? Just get the word out. Where can people contact you at? All that jazz.
Well, my YouTube channel, it's where I'm going to post more and more stuff that is not related to visual effects. I'm going to start posting stuff related to indie game development. And that's where I would go if I would want someone to contact me. But my mail is there, basically.
Awesome.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Cool, Gabriel. This has been an awesome experience getting to talk to you and hear about your visual effects journey, along with this awesome production company that you're going to create and make these cool games. So super excited to see where the future takes you with all this.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much, Travis, for the invitation here for the podcast. Really appreciate the opportunity to word out, to speak my experience. Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode with Gabe. It was an absolute honor and privilege to be able to talk with him. If you're a new artist looking to improve your skills and to further your education, definitely check out Gabe's courses. He's got them for Unity, he's got them for Unreal. It's just a great opportunity to learn about the foundations of the visual effects. And if you really like Gabe, support him on Patreon. As an independent artist, I know how difficult it can be to really make a living these days. So any chance you have to really kind of support those that are bringing valuable content to the board, Gabe is an excellent person with a plethora of knowledge and a little bit of entertainment, if you can find his sense of humor. For those that are looking into getting their assets out the store, Unity seems to be the bigger bet, but we also know that Unreal has some potential. So if you want to put your stuff on the marketplace, there is some profitability there. But if you're looking to get your own course going, understand that it is an enormous amount of work and it's going to be a couple months. So definitely think things through before you jump on there. Awesome, guys. Today was a really great episode, and I'm really excited to be sharing our next one coming up next week. Until next time, rock on.